Welcome to the SNS Podcast. This is your boy, Ahmad K Smith, also known as AK, also known as the coolest guy in sports. Here with season 2 on the way. In totality, this would be episode number 38, but since it's a new season, I have a new co-host. Go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Let's get the drum roll ready. My name is Cheikh N'Diaye. I'm a co-worker with Ahmad. It's a pleasure to be here, man, and I have a really good background in basketball, and I'm really passionate about sports, so I'm glad to be on this podcast with you.
Let's get right into it. We know it's been a crazy offseason in the NBA. A lot of trades happening, a lot of players moving teams, a lot of players kind of figuring out what they're going to do for their next quest, like the Paul Georges of the world, like the Kawhi Leonards, Kyrie Irving, trying to figure out basically leaving teams, figuring out what situation is going to make them more happy. So I want to ask you, what are you most excited about heading into the 2019-2020 NBA season?
Well, I'm excited for really two things. First, with so many trades going on this offseason, we've now gone from a league that had a big three to now a league that's had a dynamic duo for most teams. So there are a lot of teams that have dynamic duos who really weren't in the championship picture, and now we could really talk about a team like the Portland Trailblazers. Sure, they were competitors to get to Western Conference Finals, but we never really thought of them as a championship team. So will the league really be better or more entertaining as a league dominated by dynamic duos? So that's one thing I immediately thought of when all this stuff happened.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like for the first time in the past 3 years, the NBA is really wide open. We knew that the Warriors were going to the finals each and every year. We knew when LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he was going to be representing the East. The Cavs were going to be representing the East. So for the first time in a long time, I really agree that it's so many teams that can compete for an NBA championship. If you're just looking at it, you got the Rockets, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Sixers, even the Nuggets. And some people even think the Jazz are contenders. So
definitely.
That's what I'm really, really excited about. And also, Kevin Durant going to, I would say, the Brooklyn Nets. Even though he's not playing this year, the following season, the Brooklyn Nets are going to be a contender as well. So I would definitely say that for the first time in a long time, the league is definitely wide open.
It definitely is, and it makes me even wonder with so much that went into all season. I think there are going to be a lot of moves, or it may be even a Kawhi Leonard type of move, even before the trade deadline, because like you said, the league is so wide open. So there may be a team with a star, like, for example, Jimmy Butler with the Miami Heat, that may need a second star. And then next thing you know, they might be in contention for a championship if they get that second star. Because all you really need now with the way the league looks now is two dynamic star level players and consistent role players. So maybe a team that like Denver or Miami looks for that second star and they can make a trade, just even though it may not have the leverage to, but because it's so wide open, they might just risk it and say, hey, let's go for the star level player and we'll see what we can get.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Even like the Toronto Raptors, they're in a position to make a move.
Definitely.
Possibly for a Bradley Beal. I think Bradley Beal is probably the biggest trading piece, and what if is going to be the biggest.
That's your guy right there.
That's my guy from St. Louis, of course. But I think he's going to be the biggest what if. What is going to happen to Bradley Beal? Because like you said, you got the Nuggets who can really possibly offer the best deal for Bradley Beal. They have some guys they can give up, and then you got, like you said, maybe the Miami Heat and even the Toronto Raptors. So this season is going to be very, very exciting. Another thing that I'm very excited about for this upcoming season is the fact that Westbrook and James Harden are kind of reunited. You know, they played 3 seasons with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Both have won multiple scoring titles and MVPs since then. And a lot of people are worried about them being too high volume, ball dominant guards, and how they're going to fit with the Houston Rockets together in the backcourt. But to me, I feel like they're going to be the perfect fit because we already kind of saw it happen with James Harden and Chris Paul. People were worried about how are they going to fit, and then they fit it nicely. And now you give Houston Rockets with James Harden, you give them Russell Westbrook, who's a better player than Chris Paul at this point of his career. I think it's going to fit nicely.
Yeah, I think it's going to fit nicely. And like you said, we saw it with Chris Paul, and for the most part, the pairing between them really worked. It was just when Chris Paul got hurt last year, Harden had to go into this streak where he had to put the team on his back and put up some insane numbers. And because of that, it was really hard to go back to what the pairing used to be because James got so used to dominating the ball because Chris Paul was hurt and he had to take on that necessary load. But last year against the Warriors, we saw them when Chris Paul was healthy take them to 7 games, and he was arguably even the best player in that series. So it's shown that it could work. And with the Westbrook being different than Chris Paul, that is definitely true. He's probably a worse shooter, even though he's a more dynamic athlete. But we saw in OKC that they can play together, even though James was at a different point in his career, so was Westbrook. But some if you look at the film and like some of the playoff moments when they played against Dallas or the Spurs when they were OKC, they played really great together when Westbrook was able to go off the ball, take that like the pressure off Westbrook to make the ball, and then Harden could just take the ball and create his own offense and for others too. So it was just an equal opportunity for him. And the main thing that is going to matter is whether the ego is going to work. From a basketball standpoint, it's shown that it can work. The product was already produced. The main thing is now is just whether or not their egos, since they're both two individual MVPs now, can they coexist with each other now from an ego standpoint?
Definitely, I definitely agree. Who do you feel is the most pressure on, James Harden or Russell Westbrook, to make this duo work efficiently?
The most pressure, I think, is on Harden because it's his team. And we know one thing about Westbrook, like even though that he's had his failures in the postseason and he sometimes people say that he pads his stats with the triple doubles and everything. But one thing you know is that Russell will go 100% at any moment. So we don't associate with him with choking or just falling short in the playoffs due to that reason. With Harden, though, sometimes you could point to his game and say maybe he drains himself from all the work that he does in the regular season into the postseason. But we know some people say that, hey, Harden has come short in the playoffs and that he chokes and where the moments are too bright. And I think for him, this is his team. It's his situation. We now associate with him as the better player between the two just based on what he's accomplished the last 3 years being in the MVP race and even getting an MVP. So I think this is James Harden's lead to take right now. And since you're a former MVP, you kind of have to just it's on your terms now, and you have the pieces now. Why not, with the league being so wide open, is your opportunity to take the league as say you were the best player in this league?
I agree. I think James Harden is a title away from cementing his legacy in the NBA. He's already an NBA great, but I just think he needs really one title to kind of like, Dwayne Wade is my favorite player.
Same here, brother.
Dwayne Wade is also your favorite player.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, but I feel that James Harden really only needs like maybe 1 or 2 rings to probably surpass Dwayne Wade if we're talking about being in that conversation with Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan as a top 3 shooting guard of all time. What do you say about that?
Well, that's debate we could save at another time, but but I do agree, since when he got traded from OKC to Houston, he really cemented Houston as his own team, and his own, like the city of Houston has really embraced him into a legend to where he can really just flat out put his legacy even above Hakeem, I think, because Hakeem, as great as he was, only really got 1 ring, and that was with Clyde, and that was after Jordan retired. So
facts.
James, with the league being wide open in the era where you see Steph Curry changing the league with shooting and LeBron James being the dominant athlete he is, we are looking for that next guy to carry over to the next generation. James can really just flat out say, hey, I'm the best player.
He's such an offensive freak of nature, offensive stud. Like his ability to get to the free throw line. Like a lot of people try to say that, oh, that's a flaw in his game, but that's a skill. Getting to the free throw line, creating opportunities for yourself, and being dominant and getting those free, easy points, that is a skill. A lot of people just don't like it because they don't like the way he plays, but that is a skill. A lot of people got caught up this past season, I would say, with Giannis Antetokounmpo and James Harden. I felt personally that James Harden should have been the MVP this past season. You don't put up the type of performances each and every night and not win the MVP. But it just seems like the media created this narrative that they wanted Giannis Antetokounmpo to win the MVP award, and he kind of led the Bucks from, a 7th seed to the 1st seed. in the Eastern Conference. So it's kind of like everybody was against James Harden. But if you just watch the game, all those games last season where he's put up that incredible run, it's hard for me to really say that James Harden shouldn't have won the MVP over Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, I was really conflicted on that, to be honest, because like you said, like this kind of reminded me of like 2008 to 2009 season where LeBron put up these incredible numbers and got the league got the Cavs to 66 wins, but Wade had arguably the better season that year, led the league in scoring, 7 assists, got the Heat, who barely had anybody on that team. A second best player is Michael Beasley, to 44 wins, and I thought he had the better year, but LeBron got the MVP because the whole narrative of being the best player on the best team. And I was conflicted on that, but I thought Giannis deserved it mainly because the level he maintained it throughout the entire year in terms of Harden really went on that barrage of scoring where it was they were about a 9 seed and Chris Paul got hurt. And at that point, it was at least 20 games into the season where I would consider James Harden was an MVP candidate, a top 5 MVP candidate at that time. From that stretch on, yes, he was the MVP, but for an 82-game season, Giannis never declined from the standard he set from game 1 to game 82. Okay. So that's where I was conflicted on it. Had Giannis fallen off, like especially during the last stretch of the season, then hell yeah, I would have gave James Harden MVP without a doubt. But Giannis, I don't know what that man eats, but he kept the same. He kept the same level from game 1 to game 82 from a two-way player, averaging 25, 12, and 5, and being a top 5 defensive player of the year as well. So I felt that we had what we've given the award to in past circumstances, we had to give it to the same for Giannis as well. But there should also be an award to give James Harden as well because you can't have a season like that and just not get anything.
That's what I think they need to do. Maybe like an Offensive Player of the Year award is separate from the MVP award, something like that.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Similar to what they do with the Defensive Player of the Year award. But speaking of Giannis Antetokounmpo, that's another thing I'm very excited about this upcoming season is he's coming off the MVP that he won. Mm-hmm. But I feel like how much better can he get? I feel like he's only reached I want to say 65 to 70% of his potential as a player. There's a lot of things he can improve on. I've been vocal about it, doing a lot of podcasts, being on Twitter, just talking about that Giannis Antetokounmpo, as great as he is, he has no skill. And he has a lot to work on. And a lot of people are talking about that he needs to get a jump shot. Yes, he does need to get a jump shot, but he needs to first, I would say, learn how to score in the post. So many times it's kind of like he has no post moves. He has no turnaround fadeaway. He has no back to the basket game. A lot of times his point is just coming from him being at the top of the key, driving really hard, creating fouls, dunking the basketball. If he can get a post game where he can start developing and backing down players and then making passes out of the double team, that can allow him to be even more dangerous until his 3-point shot and his mid-range shot starts to be more consistent over the course of his long career. Because he's only like 24, 25 right now?
Yeah,
that's why I said
incredible.
That's why I feel like he's only like 65%. He's only reached 65% of the potential as good as he's going to get so far.
Yeah, and I'm looking at these players now like you see like a Kawhi Leonard, a Paul George, a Kyrie Irving, even a De'Aaron Fox training at the Mamba Academy, and I'm looking at that and I'm saying to myself, if Giannis were able to just go to that and take a pinch of what Kobe is teaching these players now, that would incredibly improve his game right there. Because like Giannis, I know when you say about skill, obviously Giannis has skills, but in terms of that next level where it's postseason basketball and you need like an extra go-to move to get to score when everything is crowded inside the paint or when teams are sagging off daring you to shoot, that's where I think Giannis needs to evolve right there. Because like you saw what Toronto did where they made an adjustment and put Kawhi initially on him, and then after he gets past Kawhi, there was an extra line of defense so he wouldn't get into the paint. You don't even need necessarily a 3-point shot, but you need a go-to move outside the paint to at least give you some easy baskets to where you can keep the defense honest, and then you could go back to what your strength is. And I think that's something you're going to see from Zion as well when he starts to adjust and get further on to the regular season as well, because you see the man's getting anything he wants in the paint, but there's going to be an adjustment as well.
Exactly. And I feel, and speaking of Zion, another thing we're very excited about, you're exactly right. Zion may average. At first, I was talking about he's going to be a glue guy, this rookie season, but looking at him play in the preseason, seeing how dominant he is, he may average like 20 and 10, shooting like close to 60% from the field because he's going to take all twos and dunks this season. Like he's going to get 10 points basically off a fast break transition. And he's probably the most hyped prospect since LeBron James back in the early 2000s, just due to his size and athleticism. And it's going to be very fun to watch the Pelicans. But like you said, over the course of his career, I actually feel that he's going to have to really develop because he's not 6'11" like Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's like 6'5". Mm-hmm. So he's going to definitely have to develop more skill over the course of his career. And that's why I feel personally, even though he's going to have all the highlights, he's going to have all the marketing and backing of ESPN and Bleacher Report and all these things, and overtime, they're all going to be very, pro Zion. He's going to win the Rookie of the Year, of course, but over the course of his career, Ja Morant, to me, is going to be a better basketball player and probably have a better career than Zion Williamson. What do you say about that?
That's really hard. I really love Ja's game. I still haven't seen much of the jump shot yet. Yeah. And how it'll translate into the league. That will probably be the only concern I have, just in terms of he shot it well in college from the games I watched, but in terms of the league, you just never know how it's going to translate. But I can see it definitely because Ja's just a freak of a nature athlete, and he's already getting put into a great situation where he has another guy in Jaren Jackson who's probably better than him right now, but that's already a dynamic duo that you could build around. How Memphis decides to build around those two, we'll see. But I think with Zion, what helps him and why he'll be immediately better right now and maybe later, because if you look at the team that's constructed for the Pelicans, like you already have a great facilitator in Lonzo, and their MVP on that team is probably Drew Holiday, who I think is probably the 5th best shooting guard in the league right now. Definitely top 10.
Definitely top 10. One of the most underrated shooting guards in the league. Easy.
Definitely. And he's gonna have a year that I think people are just gonna have to look out for. But if you look at a guy like Kawhi Leonard, he was able to just not really come in and have to be the guy for the Spurs. He was able to develop and not really have so much pressure on him. Zion's gonna have the social media pressure, of course, but from a basketball perspective, he can just play basketball in New Orleans because there are so many guys that can do other things for him as he can develop those other skills for right now. So it's gonna be close, but right now, I give the edge to Zion just because of the situation he's put in. And David Griffin, he knows what he's doing right now. You can see the impact he's made on the Pelicans from the moment he's gotten that job on their basketball operations.
Definitely, I definitely agree. And it's going to be a very, very exciting 2019, 2020 NBA season. I don't think I've ever been more excited for a season in a very, very long time.
We have waited a long time for this, and I don't know. It's gonna be great to watch it. It's because now there's no favorites, so it just adds more parity.
No favors, and it possibly can be this way for the next 3 years if you really think about it. Because I don't really all these guys in contracts, unless there's gonna be a couple trades, of course. But I think we're leaving the Big Three era, like you said in the beginning of the podcast. We're entering a new dynamic 2 era. Like every team that's great has 2 solid players, and it's going to be that way for at least the next 3 years. So I'm very, very excited.